There are moments in history that test true human character, moments where people must choose between following standard procedures or honoring something greater, something deeper about humanity and dignity. This is one of those stories, a story that occurred in April 1945 during liberation operations in the Philippines. It is a story about moral choices, about leadership, and about what it means to remain human even when circumstances push in the opposite direction. It is a story that deserves to be remembered. April 19, 1945. Clear morning in the Philippines, approximately 10 kilometers north of Manila. The air carries the smell of tropical humidity, mixed with dust from damaged buildings. The sun is already high, promising another hot and humid day. An abandoned hospital stands in the middle of an area recently liberated by American forces. The two-story building shows signs of rapid abandonment, broken windows, open doors swinging in the wind, medical equipment scattered across the floor. It is the kind of place people leave running when they know the territory is about to change hands. Sergeant Thomas Callahan leads a small reconnaissance patrol through this territory. He is 32 years old, native of Pennsylvania, angular face marked by 3 years of service in the Pacific. His brown eyes carry that expression of constant alertness that all veterans develop, always scanning, always evaluating potential threats. He is known among his men as fair but demanding, the type of leader who expects discipline, but also demonstrates genuine concern for the welfare of his team. Before being drafted, he worked in a steel factory in Pittsburgh, knew about hard work and responsibility. Now he leads men in situations where wrong decisions cost lives. His patrol consists of 4 men. Private First Class James Kowalski from Chicago is 29 years old, veteran of several major campaigns in the Pacific. His jaw works constantly, chewing nothing, a nervous habit developed through many tense situations. 2 weeks ago, he witnessed a traumatic incident where a close colleague, PFC Miller, lost his life during prisoner processing. One of the captives detonated a device hidden in his uniform, causing fatalities. The memory of that moment plays on repeat behind Kowalski's eyes, leaving him hypervigilant and deeply distrustful of any situation involving prisoners. Corporal Eduardo Martinez is 24 years old, comes from a ranch outside San Antonio, Texas. He is methodical and steady, served as military police before transferring to operational units, which makes him particularly conscious about appropriate procedures. He takes regulations seriously, believes that structure and protocol exist to keep everyone safe. He is the type of soldier who reads manuals during free time, who knows procedures from memory, who feels uncomfortable when situations deviate from established protocols. Private Tommy Daniels comes from rural Tennessee, is only 18 years old, arrived in the Philippines 3 weeks ago. He is still adjusting to the reality that differs so strongly from the abstractions of training camp. His hands grip his rifle too tightly, knuckles white. This is his first real situation involving prisoners. Everything is new to him. Every sound, every decision, every moment of tension. He watches Sergeant Callahan intensely, trying to learn how a good leader navigates complex situations. Private First Class William Chen is 22 years old, born in San Francisco, to parents who immigrated from Guangzhou. His family operates a restaurant in Chinatown. Chen speaks Mandarin fluently and can understand some Japanese, which makes him valuable as an improvised translator. He is quiet, observant, carries with him deep understanding of what it feels like to be judged by appearance instead of character. He has seen discrimination against people of Asian origin, understands cultural nuances that other soldiers often do not perceive. The patrol enters the abandoned hospital carefully, weapons ready but not in aggressive position. Callahan uses hand signals to direct his men, precise movements that communicate without words. They sweep the ground floor first, checking each room, each corridor, each potential location for ambush. The building is silent except for the sounds they themselves create, the creaking of wooden floors under boots, the rustling of equipment, controlled breathing. On the second floor, Callahan opens the door to a ward that must have been reserved for patient recovery, and then he freezes. Inside the room, pressed against the opposite wall, are 7 women wearing white nurse uniforms, Japanese uniforms. It is clear from their state that they were left behind during precipitous evacuation. They look at the American soldiers with expressions of absolute terror. Not terror of those still fighting, but terror of those who believe their last moment has arrived. The oldest, perhaps 35 years old, positions herself protectively in front of the other 6. She wears a lieutenant patch on her uniform. Her face shows determination mixed with fear, like someone who has decided to face the inevitable with as much dignity as possible. This is Lieutenant Yoshida Keiko, leader of this small group of medical professionals who were left behind when Japanese forces retreated. The other 6 nurses range in age from 20 to 30 years. One young woman, perhaps the youngest of the group, has tears flowing silently down her face but maintains erect posture, refusing to collapse completely. Another, about 25 years old, holds a small Buddhist prayer card, lips moving in silent supplication. A third closes her eyes tightly as if by not seeing the Americans she could somehow deny the reality of the situation. The remaining ones keep eyes open but fixed on a distant point, dissociating from the present moment. Callahan recognizes fear when he sees it. He has seen it in the eyes of Japanese soldiers who emerged from caves with hands raised, trembling so intensely they could barely stand. Seen it in the faces of Filipino civilians caught between opposing armies. Sees it now in these women who look at him and his men as if looking at executioners. They clearly believe they are about to experience brutal treatment, possibly torture, probably termination of their lives. This belief comes from information they received about how Americans supposedly treated prisoners. Incorrect information designed to discourage surrender. Kowalski leans against the doorframe, jaw working faster now, a visible sign of his growing tension. The memory of Miller is fresh in his mind. That moment when everything seemed safe and then exploded into chaos and loss. He looks at these 7 nurses and sees potential threats, sees people who might be hiding dangerous devices in their uniforms. His hand grips the rifle more tightly. "What do we do with them, Sergeant?" Martinez asks. He is the first to vocalize the question everyone is thinking. His voice is calm, but carries the weight of responsibility. He knows procedures, knows there are specific protocols for processing prisoners, but he also feels discomfort with the immediate situation. These are women, medical professionals clearly terrified. The situation does not fit perfectly into the simple categories of the manual. Callahan considers the question carefully. Standard operating procedure is clear. All prisoners require complete inspection for dangerous items or explosive devices. Male prisoners remove clothing down to undergarments, each article of clothing inspected, each area that could hide something dangerous verified. The procedure exists because lives depend on it. Miller died because someone got careless. Kowalski's story about that incident is fresh in everyone's mind. Nobody wants to repeat that mistake. Nobody wants to be the person whose negligence resulted in fatalities. But these are women. Military women, yes. But the dynamics change in ways that regulations do not adequately address. The practical requirement of security collides with something more, something harder to articulate in the language of military orders. There's the question of human dignity, of how you treat people who have already surrendered, of what kind of people you and your men choose to be even when nobody important is watching. Kowalski finally vocalizes what he is thinking. "Sergeant, we need to inspect them completely. We don't know what they might be hiding. We can't assume they're harmless just because they're women. Remember Miller? He was processing prisoners who seemed completely safe. 2 minutes later he was gone. We can't risk that again. We can't put our lives at risk because we want to be gentlemen." His voice carries urgency, almost desperation. The trauma of that previous incident is still processing in his system. He is not being cruel or insensitive. He is genuinely terrified of the possibility of repeating that experience, of watching another colleague lose his life because security protocols were not followed rigorously. Martinez adds his perspective. "Sergeant, there is protocol for this. We need to follow established procedures. If we deviate and something goes wrong, we will be held accountable. More importantly, if something goes wrong, we could be putting the entire patrol at risk. I understand it is an uncomfortable situation, but regulations exist for reasons." His voice is less emotional than Kowalski's, more focused on procedural aspects, but the underlying concern is similar. Daniel says nothing but watches Callahan's face, waiting to learn what type of leader he follows. His eyes move between Callahan and the Japanese nurses, trying to process the situation, trying to understand how veterans navigate these morally complex moments. Everything in his training emphasized following procedures, obeying orders, maintaining discipline. But nothing in his training prepared him for the emotional reality of this specific moment. Chen remains quiet to the side, observing. He understands more about the situation than his fellow soldiers realize. He sees the terror in these women's faces and recognizes its origin. He knows they were taught that Americans are monsters, that surrender means a fate worse than termination. He also understands shame in a way his colleagues do not understand. He knows what it means to be publicly stripped of dignity, to be reduced to something less than human in the eyes of others. His family faced this when executive orders sent friends and neighbors to internment camps because of the supposed danger of their ancestry. Chen avoided that fate because he is Chinese, but he saw the humiliation in the faces of his Japanese-American peers when they departed. Callahan looks at the 7 nurses. He sees Lieutenant Yoshida positioned protectively in front of the others, sees the young nurse, perhaps 20 years old, with tears flowing silently down her face. Sees another, perhaps 25, holding a prayer card, lips moving in silent supplication. Sees women who have given up hope but maintain discipline even facing what they believe is their final moment. He thinks about his wife Helen, who works in a defense factory in Philadelphia, operating heavy machinery to contribute to the effort. Thinks about his mother, who raised 3 boys alone after their father died in a mining accident in 1928. Thinks about his sister Margaret, who serves as a nurse in the European theater. Thinks about every woman who has ever shown him kindness, courage, or simple human decency. Thinks about what kind of man he wants to be when this difficult situation finally ends. Thinks about what kind of leader he wants to be for the men under his command. Thinks about the values for which they are supposedly fighting: democracy, human rights, basic human dignity. Do these values mean something, or are they just pretty words that evaporate the moment they become inconvenient? He makes a decision. Chen, translate exactly what I say, Callahan orders. Chen nods, positioning himself so he can see both Callahan and the Japanese nurses. Tell them we need to inspect them for dangerous items. It is required by our regulations. For our safety and theirs, this inspection needs to be complete. But we are going to do this in a way that preserves their dignity as much as possible. Callahan speaks slowly, giving Chen time to process and translate accurately. Chen begins translating into Japanese. The nurses listen with expressions that mix fear and confusion. They clearly do not understand what is coming. Tell them I'm going to ask them to form a line facing that wall, Callahan continues, pointing to the opposite wall away from the entrance. Tell them they will need to remove their uniforms and place them in a pile in front of them, so we can inspect each item completely. Chen hesitates momentarily, then continues translating. The level of fear in the nurses' faces increases dramatically. 2 begin trembling visibly. The young nurse, who was already crying, closes her eyes tightly, tears flowing faster. But Chen, here is the important part, Callahan continues, his voice firm and clear. Tell them that I and my men are going to turn our backs. We are going to face the opposite direction. We will not look at them during this process. They will remove their uniforms while facing the wall, will place the clothing on the floor, and then will remain facing the wall. Only when they inform us they are finished will we inspect the piles of clothing on the floor. At no time will we look at them. I give my word, and my word is good. When we finish the inspection, they can dress again while we continue with our backs turned. Only when they inform us they are completely dressed again will we turn back. This preserves security, but also preserves dignity. Chen blinks, surprised by the solution. He translates carefully, using a respectful tone. The nurses listen with expressions that change from terror to profound confusion. Lieutenant Yoshida responds with a question in Japanese. She asks why you would do this, Chen translates. She does not understand. She says the information they received said that Americans are people who would treat them brutally. I know what their information says, Callahan interrupts. Tell her we are soldiers, not animals. Tell her we follow rules, including rules about treating prisoners with basic human dignity. Tell her that she and her nurses have surrendered, that they are under our protection now, and that protection means more than just physical security. It means respectful treatment. Chen translates, his own voice carrying growing respect for Callahan's decision. Kowalski steps away from the door abruptly. Sergeant, are you sure about this? It is a lot of risk. We could all be in danger because you want to be a gentleman. His voice carries urgency born of traumatic experience. Callahan turns to face his men directly, his voice low, command voice that does not accept arguments. Kowalski, I understand your concern. I share it. But we are going to do this correctly. We are going to turn our backs during the moment of their vulnerability. We are going to inspect each piece of clothing completely. We are going to maintain discipline and situational awareness. But we are not going to humiliate these women unnecessarily. We are soldiers of the United States. We are better than what the information said we would be. Is that clear? Kowalski's jaw works faster. His eyes burn with anger and fear and frustration. Finally, he nods once, abruptly. Clear, Sarge. Martinez. Callahan looks at the corporal. Whatever you say, Sarge. I trust your judgment. Daniels. Callahan turns to the youngest soldier. The young man swallows hard. Yes, Sergeant. Chen, you are translating. You will need to turn as well once they begin. Understood, Sergeant. Callahan addresses the nurses again through Chen. Lieutenant Yoshida, I need you and your nurses to form a line facing that far wall. You will remove your uniforms and place each item in a pile in front of you. I and my men will face the opposite direction. We will not turn. Once you complete and inform us, we will inspect the clothing while you remain facing the wall. When we confirm there are no problematic items, you will dress again. Only then will we turn back. Do you understand? Chen translates extensively. Lieutenant Yoshida asks for clarification on several points. The conversation takes 3 minutes. Finally, she turns to her nurses and speaks rapidly in Japanese. Her tone carries authority but also reassurance. Whatever she tells them, they respond with small nods, although fear remains evident. The nurses form a line along the wall, 7 women in white uniforms, positioned with military posture despite visible trembling. Morning light illuminates them from the side, casting long shadows. They look so young. Even Lieutenant Yoshida, perhaps 35, looks too young for the burden of this moment. Callahan positions his men facing the exit, eyes forward. Anyone who turns before I give explicit permission will face court-martial. I am not joking. Maintain ready position in case of external threat, but under no circumstances does anyone look behind us. Clear. Yes, Sergeant. They respond in unison. Kowalski adds quietly, You are placing a lot of faith in them, Sarge. I am placing faith in doing the right thing, Callahan responds. He hears sounds behind him. Fabric moving, buttons being unbuttoned, zippers being opened, the rustling of uniforms being removed. Sounds that should be ordinary, but in this context carry tremendous weight of vulnerability and trust. Each man deals with the moment differently. Kowalski stares at the door, jaw still working. He forces his mind to focus on security, examines the tree line visible through the broken window, searches for movement, signs of approaching threat. He knows the sounds of fabric, but refuses to process what they mean. Keeps his mind rigidly focused on tactical aspects. There is work to do. There is a perimeter to monitor. That is his responsibility. Focus on that. But something is changing in him despite his resistance. The simple reality that nothing bad is happening, that promise is being kept, that trust is being honored, begins slowly dissolving part of his hardened anger. Perhaps the world contains more complexity than pure anger admits. Martinez keeps eyes forward, scanning approaches. He thinks about protocol versus humanity, thinks about rules and when rules should be interpreted instead of followed blindly, thinks about telling this story someday, about explaining to his children that sometimes doing the right thing requires more courage than confrontational situations. Though perhaps he will not tell this story. Perhaps some moments remain private, shared only among those present. He allows himself a small smile. He is witnessing real leadership, the kind that training manuals never completely capture. Daniels keeps eyes open but fixed on a distant midpoint. His hands no longer tremble. Something about witnessing this act of decency has stabilized him. He understands something about Sergeant Callahan now. Something about leadership, about character, about choices that define the kind of person you are. This moment will become a reference point for him, a standard against which he will measure future decisions. Chen maintains his translator role, but internally feels deep respect for Callahan's decision. He has seen people be judged by appearance instead of character, watched people of Japanese origin treated with suspicion because of their heritage. This moment offers a counterpoint. These women are technically adversaries, but they are being treated as human beings deserving of dignity. Perhaps reconciliation begins in small moments like this. Perhaps choosing to see humanity in another, especially when it would be easier not to do so, is the foundation upon which bridges are eventually built. Callahan focuses on sounds beyond the building. Distant bombardments, wind moving through damaged structures, birds calling, oblivious to human drama. He forces himself to maintain tactical situational awareness. They remain exposed here. Adversary forces could counterattack. Dispersed elements might be hidden nearby. His responsibility extends beyond this room to the survival of his men. But another part of his mind remains fixed on the moment unfolding behind him. He gave his word. His word is the only thing guaranteeing these women's dignity. If he or his men look, if they violate the promise, then they become what the information claimed. They become monsters. The difficult situation wins another victory over human decency. More rustling of fabric. Sound of clothes being folded or stacked. Voice speaking urgently in Japanese. Lieutenant Yoshida maintaining control of her nurses even in this moment. Her voice carries authority but also something more. Kindness, perhaps. Or solidarity. 7 women sharing unbearable vulnerability together. The sounds continue for 3 minutes that feel like hours. Time distorts in moments of moral tension. Each second stretches, becomes elastic, infinite. Lieutenant Yoshida speaks. Her voice trembles slightly but maintains clarity. She speaks in Japanese first, then tries English. We finished. We ready. Chen translates what she said in Japanese, though the English was sufficiently clear. They have completed and are facing the wall as instructed, Sergeant. Callahan takes a deep breath. Status check. Anyone see external threats? Negative, Sarge. Martinez reports. Perimeter clean, Daniels adds, his voice minimally steady. Kowalski. Callahan waits. A pause. Then all clear, Sergeant. Chen, translate. Tell them we are going to inspect the clothing now. Tell them we will not look at them. Tell them to remain facing the wall and nobody will see them. Tell them they have my word and my word is good. Chen translates carefully. A murmur of acknowledgement comes from behind them. Kowalski, Martinez, you on security. Hold position, eyes forward. Chen, Daniels, you with me. We inspect the clothing pile by pile. We are thorough. We check every seam, every pocket, every possible location of concealment. We do this right. Callahan turns partially, carefully angling his movement so his field of vision includes only the piles of clothing on the floor near the wall and not the women themselves. It requires deliberate effort. His peripheral vision threatens to betray discipline, but he maintains focus on the clothing. First pile, white nurse uniform, meticulously folded even under extreme stress. Callahan picks up the jacket, checks each pocket, each seam, each button, opens it completely, examines internal lining. Nothing. Moves to pants. Same process. Checks waist, ankles, each pocket. Nothing. Chen and Daniels follow similar process on the other piles. Second pile. Same routine. Meticulous inspection. They find a small medical kit in one pocket. Callahan opens it. Contains basic bandages, suture needles, medication ampules, tools of a medical professional. He shows it to Chen and Daniels, then places it back carefully with the pile of clothing. This woman will want this back. These are tools of her profession. Third pile. They find photographs folded in an internal pocket. Callahan examines them only enough to confirm they are nothing problematic. One shows family, parents, children, grandparents arranged formally for camera. The nurse in the photo looks younger, smiling, wearing civilian clothes. A life before the difficult situation. Another photograph shows a group of young women in nursing uniforms, arms intertwined, smiling at the camera. Classmates, perhaps, or training companions. Memories of simpler times. Callahan places the photos back carefully. Fourth pile. They find a small Buddhist prayer book, pages worn from frequent use. Callahan does not need to read Japanese to recognize religious text. The book is clearly much handled, obviously a source of comfort. Places it back respectfully. Fifth pile. They find letters, folded and refolded multiple times, handwritten in Japanese, probably from home, from family. Callahan does not try to read. Some privacy must be maintained even in security inspection circumstances. The existence of the letters confirms these are real people with real connections, not just abstract adversaries. Sixth pile. They find a medical corps patch clearly valued and kept even when the rest of the uniform shows wear. Evidence of profession. Evidence of dedication to saving lives even while the difficult situation destroyed them. Seventh pile. The last inspection. Chen finds a small photograph tucked in a pocket. Family portrait. Parents, children, grandparents arranged formally for camera. The nurse in the photo looks younger, smiling, wearing civilian clothes. A life before the complicated situation. Chen shows it to Callahan quietly. Callahan nods. Keep it with her belongings. She will want it back. They complete the inspection. 7 piles of clothing, minutely verified. No dangerous items. No devices. No explosives. No threats. Just fabric and personal items belonging to 7 terrified women who surrendered their last protection. Callahan stands, still maintaining careful sight lines. Chen, translate. Tell them we have completed the inspection. No concerning items were found. They can dress now. We will continue turned away until they inform us they are finished. Chen translates. A moment of silence follows, then rapid conversation in Japanese. Lieutenant Yoshida's voice carries clear relief despite ongoing tension. The sounds reverse. Fabric moving again but differently now. Faster. Urgent. Sound of clothes being worn, buttons being fastened, dignity being restored piece by piece. Someone laughs. A single note of hysteria quickly suppressed. Another voice murmurs what might be a prayer of gratitude. Kowalski still stares at the entrance, still holding his rifle. His shoulders have relaxed slightly. Something changed in him during these minutes, though he could not articulate exactly what. The simple fact that nothing bad happened carries weight. Promise was kept. Trust was honored. Perhaps the world contains more complexity than pure anger admits. Martinez allows himself a small smile. Thinks about telling this story someday. About explaining to his children that sometimes doing the right thing requires more courage than confrontation. Though perhaps he will not tell this story. Perhaps some moments remain private, shared only among those present. Daniels opens his eyes completely, realizing they had been half closed. His hands no longer tremble. Something about witnessing this act of decency stabilized him. He understands something about Sergeant Callahan now, something about leadership that training manuals never capture. Chen maintains his translator role, but internally feels deep respect for Callahan's decision. He saw people be judged by appearance instead of character. Watched people treated with suspicion because of their heritage. This moment offers a counterpoint. These women are technically adversaries, but are being treated as human beings deserving of dignity. Perhaps reconciliation begins in small moments like this. Dressing takes approximately 2 minutes. Then Lieutenant Yoshida speaks again in her hesitant English. We finished. We dressed. You can turn. Callahan gives the order. Turn, gentlemen. They rotate back. 7 nurses stand against the wall again, now dressed, still maintaining position. But everything has changed. Their faces show residual fear mixed with confusion, and something more. Amazement, perhaps. Or the beginning of understanding that everything the information taught might be wrong. Lieutenant Yoshida speaks again, this time more Japanese than English. Chen translates. She asks why you did this. She says they expected very different treatment. She says the information said Americans were people without honor. Callahan responds through Chen. Tell her we are soldiers, not monsters. Tell her we follow principles. Tell her that now they are prisoners under American protection, and we take that responsibility seriously. They will be transported to a processing facility, where they will receive respectful treatment according to international conventions. Chen translates. Lieutenant Yoshida responds, her voice carrying something that might be hesitant gratitude mixed with ongoing confusion. Callahan continues. Tell her we are going to establish communication with command to arrange transportation. Until then, we will remain here maintaining security. They should sit and rest. We will provide water if they are thirsty. Chen translates. The nurses gradually move from the wall and sit together in a corner, speaking quietly among themselves. Occasionally one looks toward the Americans with an expression that mixes residual distrust with cautious curiosity. Kowalski approaches Callahan quietly, while Martinez maintains vigilance at the door and Daniels monitors the windows. Sarge, his voice is low, I think you did the right thing. I did not think I would think that when you first suggested it, but you did. Callahan looks at his veteran soldier. Changed your mind? Yes, sir. Those women are not threats. They are just trying to survive, same as us. The difficult situation does not make everyone bad people, Kowalski. It makes situations impossible, but we can still choose how to act within those situations. Miller would have approved, I think. He always talked about doing things right, maintaining standards. Yes, he did. I am writing home tonight, Sarge. I am going to tell my wife about this, about how sometimes the hardest thing is remaining decent. She will understand that, I think. Communication with command establishes transportation for the prisoners. Truck will arrive within 2 hours. Until then, Callahan's patrol maintains security of the location. The nurses sit together in a corner, speaking quietly among themselves. Occasionally, one looks at the Americans with an expression that mixes residual distrust with cautious curiosity. Approximately an hour and a half after the initial inspection, Lieutenant Yoshida stands and walks carefully toward Callahan. Chen automatically moves to translate. She speaks in Japanese, Chen translates. She says she wants to thank you for the way you treated her and her nurses. She says they expected terrible things. She says you showed honor when it would have been easier not to do so. Callahan nods. Tell her we only did what was correct. Lieutenant Yoshida reaches into her pocket and removes a small patch, Japanese Medical Corps insignia. She offers it to Callahan with both hands, clearly a respectful gesture. Chen translates her words. She wants you to have this. It is a symbol, recognition, a bridge across an immense divide. I cannot accept officially, Callahan says, but I will keep it as a reminder that even in difficult situations, we can choose to see each other as humans. She nods understanding, places the patch in his hand. Her fingers are steady now. Earlier trembling disappeared. Their eyes meet for a moment. No words are needed. Some understanding transcends language. The truck arrives with MP escort and American nurse, Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, assigned to supervise transfer of the prisoners. Morrison is a veteran of several operations, experienced in handling prisoners. She observes the scene with a professional eye. The Japanese nurses are calm, the American soldiers respectful. The environment does not carry the extreme tension that usually characterizes prisoner situations. She approaches Callahan. Sergeant, this is unusual. Most prisoner situations are much more tense. Your patrol handled this with professionalism and respect. These people were terrified. Your approach probably saved them from significant trauma. We did what was right, Lieutenant. That is rarer than it should be, Sergeant. I will note your conduct in my report. The nurses climb into the truck. Lieutenant Yoshida looks back one last time, a small nod of her head toward Callahan. He returns the nod. The truck departs. Callahan's patrol remains watching until the vehicle disappears down the dusty road. Daniels approaches Callahan as they prepare to depart. Sergeant, why did you choose that method? Why not just follow standard procedure? Callahan considers the question. Because actions define us, especially actions we take when nobody important is watching. Those people will remember this interaction. They will tell others. Maybe it changes something, maybe not. But we will know that we acted with honor. Daniels nods slowly. I think I understand, Sergeant. You will understand eventually. Difficult situations teach many lessons. Some of them are even worth learning. They depart, leaving the abandoned hospital behind. The building will probably be destroyed or repurposed. The specific events of that morning will disappear into the larger narrative of the complicated situation. But for the 5 men present and 7 women they encountered, this moment will persist as a memory of choice, of humanity maintained against substantial pressure to abandon it. April 20th, 1945. Meeting with Command. Captain Robert Henderson reviews Callahan's written report at Division Headquarters. He reads it twice, then summons Callahan for verbal elaboration. This is an unusual situation, Sergeant. Yes, sir. You deviated from standard inspection procedures. I maintained security while respecting the dignity of the prisoners, sir. International conventions require humane treatment. I interpreted that broadly in this specific context. And if one of those nurses had been concealing something problematic, then I would have made a tragic error, sir. But based on my assessment of the situation, the approach was appropriate. The inspection was thorough. Security was maintained. Henderson studies Callahan for a long moment. Your patrol extracted valuable information from that medical personnel. They have been cooperative in providing information about medical supply chains, casualty rates, and unit dispositions. They are cooperative because you treated them with respect when they expected harsh treatment. Lieutenant Morrison submitted a commendation for your conduct. I am approving it. That is not necessary, sir. It is entirely necessary. We are promoting certain values, Sergeant. Democracy, human rights, rule of law. When we abandon those values, we become indistinguishable from what we are fighting. You maintained those values under difficult circumstances. That is exactly the type of leadership we need. Spring of 1945. Prisoner facility. Lieutenant Yoshida shares her story with other prisoners. Word spreads. American soldiers kept their word. American soldiers showed honor. The information was not entirely true. Some prisoners become more cooperative. Seeds of reconciliation planted in small moments. Decades later. 1982. Symposium on Post-Conflict Reconciliation in San Francisco. Lieutenant Yoshida Keiko, now 72 years old, retired nursing professor in Osaka, was invited to speak about experiences and rebuilding relationships. She accepts the invitation, travels to the United States for the first time since the end of the difficult situation. The audience listens in silence as she shares her story. Difficult situations destroy many things. They destroy cities, lives, innocence, but they cannot destroy honor unless we allow them to. Sergeant Callahan did not allow it. Neither did his men. They were afraid. They had every reason to treat us harshly. Their colleagues faced difficulties. They saw terrible things, but they chose differently. They chose to see us as human beings. That choice changed everything. Somewhere in Pennsylvania, Thomas Callahan, now 62 years old, retired from the forces after 25 years, reads about this symposium in the newspaper. He keeps Lieutenant Yoshida's medical corps patch in a box in his closet, along with other service memories. He never talked much about that morning. Some memories remain too personal for casual sharing, but he remembers. He will always remember. Not the procedure or protocol, but the choices that define character when nobody important is watching. He remembers the faces of those 7 terrified nurses. He remembers the decision he made in a moment when it would have been easier to choose differently. He remembers the weight of that responsibility, and the feeling of knowing he did the right thing even when it was not the easy thing. History reminds us that moral choices occur in unexpected moments. Not in the comfort of conference rooms, but in chaotic situations where time is limited and pressure is immense. Callahan had seconds to decide. He chose to honor humanity over convenience. He chose dignity over standardized procedure. His act did not end the difficult situation. It did not change the course of history, but it changed 7 lives in that moment. It changed 5 soldiers under his command. And decades later, it offers an example that even in extreme circumstances, humanity remains possible. If this story moved you, if it made you think about honor, courage, and what it means to remain human when everything pushes in other directions, please click the like button. It helps others discover these forgotten moments of history. Not yet subscribed? Consider joining us. This channel explores untold stories, moral dilemmas, human moments that textbooks ignore. Real history is more complex and powerful than any fiction. And here is a question for you. Have you ever faced a moment where doing the right thing required courage, where you had to choose between what was easy and what was honorable? Share your story in the comments below. Let us create a community that remembers that character is revealed not in comfort, but in challenging situations. History teaches us who we were. These stories help us decide who we want to be. Subscribe, like, comment. Let us keep these stories alive. Thank you for watching.